Today in attendance, we have Whitman, Bonnie Sears, Rebecca Hanson, Bill Bolton, Chris Buckley, and Brian Murphy. We heard from Mary Ann a couple hours ago, and she's unable to make it today. All right, we will then move on to looking at the minutes from our meeting on November 21st. Any comments on the minutes? Corrections?
I only found one. On page 2, number 4, public comments, then it was down here, the motion, and it's got MS instead of MR Buckley.
Yeah, I'm married. That should be MRS.
Okay, but anyway, that's the only thing I found. I don't know if it was a big
How do
deal
we
or
find
not.
out?
Just above that, under the, above number 4, it says Ms. Sears asked if the ice cream would be made at the location, and the applicant answered no to both.
Yeah, so it's not being made, and it's not being made there, I
Yeah.
guess. I saw that too, and I thought, oh.
Yep. So we could just, I seem to remember a second question there,
No,
but I
that-
don't remember what it is.
Just get rid of to both.
Yeah, I think just give it to both.
No.
And on number 5, the first bullet point, I think it's the third sentence in, I think there's some parallel construction problems. The areas they are focusing on in the coming year is to design and permit I think that would read better, just the focus in the coming year is to design and permit a 12-foot acre parcel.
Anything else?
Picky stuff. I know that, we don't need it.
I wasn't here, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All right.
Less confusing.
Anyone else like to suggest a motion of sorts?
Anyone else? I move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
I second.
Second. We'll second that.
We will
We
second.
will second.
We got a double second?
Or a second and a third?
I think Bonnie was first.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. You may have noticed in the beginning of these, she showed the difference, what was corrected. Do you like that? Or? is
I liked it
redundant?
in particular this time because it reminded me of Flying Money.
Figured
But,
as much. Is it helpful, I should have said?
I don't know.
I think, I don't see, she could save herself some work by not doing that.
Yeah,
if she
okay.
wanted. I don't, do you find, I don't know why.
It occurred to me that they would have to pull the corrections out for the final, so it's just easier to correct them and approve this one. Okay, good. That was just my question.
Next. The continuing implementation of the master plan. So, Steve, we have your class here this
I
evening?
don't know these people.
Okay. Well, then we've got a busy house, so.
They have some kind of a plan.
Okay. The trail for time?
Real life now.
Guess so.
I'm just a disgruntled planning board member.
Disgruntled townsperson.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Meg Gordon, and I don't know. And I'm here with PSU's Community Research Experience class. And we have been working on a semester-long trail project. I'm not sure if you guys have received this document, if all of you have had a chance to look at it yet. I have a second copy, if you would like to pass it around.
It was sent
Yeah.
out last month.
I'm getting some confused.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't
Give
recall
this.
seeing it, but.
And unfortunately, the gentleman that sent it is not here.
Oh.
But he sent that in a map.
I think
I
I
have a
sent.
map.
Oh, did you send that
I
one to
think
Brian?
I sent the
Okay.
document and Maddie
Sent the
sent
district sheets.
the something
Yeah.
else, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that that can circle around to you guys so you can look at it. So should I go through this document?
How many of us have seen it?
I haven't seen that. Well, although I'd have to take a look at it, but I don't recall.
I assumed you looked at it at the last meeting. I wasn't here.
Okay, so what I have from the last meeting are the data
There were
sheets.
two different students that sent two different packages in time for that meeting. So
Okay.
if it fell through the cracks, just have them walk through it.
Yeah, let's.
I can just get
yeah,
the
walk us
main
through it.
points.
Yep.
So this new trail that we are proposing would be called the AMT Trail. And it would be approximately 3 miles, and it would start at the community gardens in town and would go all the way to Smithbridge Road near Tenny Mountain Highway. So that's the main scope of it. And we kind of explained, because there's like phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is already somewhat in existence. It's the trail that goes from the community gardens to Hatch Plaza, which we walked as a class, but it definitely needs some improvements. And then phase 2 would need to cross or go under Tenny Mountain Highway, and then continue on to Smithbridge. So, and then we have some boundaries and landmarks that it either crosses through or passes or something like that, just so you know what it's kind of hitting along, you know what it has access to. And then there's the map, which we have a greater version that shows the whole scope of it. And it would be 8 to 10 feet wide, mostly to be able to get a small vehicle to go through for maintenance purposes. And it would be packed gravel, so that it is repairable because it is a majority in the flood zone. And we referenced the master plan because there's a section, the recreation map, where you have planned some potential areas for future recreation purposes. So we kind of built off of that to have it match what's already in the master plan. And then we have a pretty good list of funds and grants sources that you can look into more. We have little blurbs of what they're meant for and where to find more information about them. So that'll help the process of finding funds for this project. And then another little blurb about liability, because there's been some issues about if homeowners would be liable. So we explained that right there because there are no issues. And then finally, case study examples. We reference towns in New Hampshire that have similar trails, so that we know it's possible, we know that we can do it, and so that you can see how they did it and how it's worked for them or not worked for them. Yeah, so that's the general outline of the document and what we put into this trail project. Questions, concerns, additions, anything?
How is this going to be done? I mean, who's going to be doing all the work, like cutting the trees up that are across the trail and?
Good question.
Apparently the town.
Yeah,
The
whoever's
Conservation
willing,
Commission,
yeah.
Takes on projects like that. I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
if that trail existed, we'd be happy to do that.
And another thing adding to it, when water and sewer extend, they are sending a sewer line down to the Green Bridge, and their headquarters is right there. So the area that they've already used as a road, which comes down to about the high school, I guess, at this point, and it's wide and improved, will continue all the way.
To the community gardens?
Yes. So the only real weird step will be getting from the gardens down to, that's where the slope pitch is. One other thing on that, it looks like the DAR is going to relocate the Baker Monument that now resides at the Armory to the trailhead. It would be a good addition to that and whatever markings that would be put up, trail information.
So they're just about done. They're all going to evaporate next week and go off to wherever they're going. The document that Meg just kind of walked us through, we have as a Word document. So it'll
And
be
a PDF. We
and a
have
PDF.
it, yeah.
So we can use elements of it. We could
Okay.
pull it if any groups in town want to work on grants or make changes. And then the map, there are GIS files, but could we assemble like a map package in a folder so that we have access to the layers, like the GPS layer that you put in there?
Yeah,
And
we could probably put it on a.
It's on
zip file.
Google,
Yeah,
so
but you
I'm,
need the files to be able to like
Yeah.
download it. So if I could put that on like a zip file.
Because you did it as an Esri map, right? Or did you do it as the Google?
It's GIS, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that would be good to have those map files so that if we wanted to do something different, we could.
Yeah.
A suggestion for just another grant to add on there would be the Moose Plate grant. Just to put on, because I think that this is a great resource for the town to, to try and implement this. So if we can just institutionalize that bit of information, I think that would be helpful. Yeah. And I think, and just a suggestion as we're sort of keeping this as a document that we're going to use internally, I just say acknowledge the class as well, so we know where,
We did have their names on the bottom of
on
the
the,
front
I've got
page.
some acknowledgements, but just the whole, that this was a class project that,
Yep.
I think it'll just help us understand, so if we uncover this document in like 10 years in the future, we'll be like, what's this? It's like finding the master plan for South Main Street, and you're like, oh, look at that. So,
Just to clarify, so how do you pronounce the Native American name for the big river?
Oh, I was hoping no one was gonna make me do that.
Squamichaki. We're practicing.
That's why we shortened it to AMT.
I was
think
watching.
that'll be.
Yeah. So adding the Moose Plate grant, adding the acknowledgement that it was a class project. Other changes, do you think we need to add in anything about the change that's coming that Brian just talked about? I mean, basically, the first phase of the project will be roughed in
yeah.
as of 2020.
Well, and as a concept, I mean, but that'll inform, because I don't know exactly what their time frame is for that, though. It isn't within the next 2 years.
All right, so we can wait, maybe.
Yeah, just stay updated on that.
Is there an issue to use that trail with water and sewer, or do they have like a right-of-way or what?
We could ask.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a right-of-way for them, but, it passes through university lands and some private stuff, and I don't think, since it's institutionalized already, it would just be a matter of hammering that out. I don't think the university has a problem with it down there.
And people use the other end, so
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
the water and sewer wouldn't have a problem. Everything.
No, it just might, depend, it would disrupt it depending on the time of year that they were doing the work down there.
And they weren't proposing to pave it, so they could get in and dig anything and just put the ledge back down.
Yeah.
There's someone in the audience who's
The chair's not recognized, isn't it?
Sorry, I was totally spacing out. I was reading. Oh. Sorry. Grace, please.
Hi, I know it's not time for necessarily public comment, but I just had a question to Bonnie's point, and not even seeing the plan specifically, but is there sort of some conversation about maintenance of the trail? I know it's just a proposal at this point, but to speak to Bonnie's point, because it sounded like there would be kind of 3 entities that you could pull from.
At this point, there is no trail.
Yeah.
So the first thing would be to do the get the money to do the engineering and actually formally construct a trail. And then you'd have to have a maintenance plan, yeah. I mean, it's not stopping the Conservation Commission or the town from going out there, I guess, with chainsaws and taking the couple of trees that are over the trail, but there's no formal trail.
There, I thought there was.
No. That's what they're proposing, is the construction of a formal
Because I know there's
trail.
a trail there, because
No, I
I,
meant as part of
Yeah.
the proposal. I was just.
oh,
Yeah, they didn't get into who should maintain it or any of that. I mean, really, we need to see if we can, it falls on us now to actually do the hard work of writing the grants and building the political will to build such a trail.
Can we get this to the select board? Have they seen this? I'm
Yeah.
looking very pointedly at you.
Yep, I'll bring it up. No, this was sent out, right? I don't recall.
I have not seen it.
I didn't
Yeah.
get
I
anything,
can
but I
make sure that I
wouldn't.
get a copy of that.
Yeah, can we send that?
And then I
back
can
out? 'Cause
distribute
I
it
don't-
out.
Or Steve, can you make
They
sure?
sent it.
Perfect.
We'll send it again.
Okay.
It's in color.
That's in black and white, but that's okay.
No more questions?
Any other questions? This is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I hope it helps you guys expedite the process of actually doing it, so, thank you.
Thank you both.
I also see that you have a copy of the map. Was there any suggestions that you had about that? It pretty much just has like the existing trail that's slightly there. It's not quite multi-purpose, but there's a slight trail. That's GPS too, so it's pretty accurate for the points. And then the yellow part is just a rough outline because there is no existing trail, so it could be changed. But yeah, any suggestions?
Any feedback on format or anything?
It gets a little busy right in where it's busy.
Yeah.
So any sort of thing that we can do to make it, to denote, like, are these different options, or is the trail gonna go, I just see a couple different loops around the intersection of, right around Hatch Plaza.
So maybe
Yeah.
label those alternatives?
Yeah, thank you. It's a much clearer way of putting it than what I just said. Yeah.
Is it possible, Sam, to kind of fade the aerial a little bit so that some of the labeling stands out, or would that be more confusing when you're reading the map?
I think fading the aerial would, because we got some aerial and topo in there, right? Is that what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you fade the aerial, I think we'll be able to see
Okay.
things a little better.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you. That was easy.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So for our second project we worked on in our class, we looked at the zoning and made some changes to it. I'm Colby St. Pierre, by the way, and Henry Casey. Let that get around. Yeah, so basically with the zoning map, it's a Google Map document, which can be edited, and we will share that link with you, because as Steve just said, we are weak. So. Just to point out two things, major points that we altered with this. I'll start with the area along Tenny Mountain Highway. It's outlined in blue. As you can see, there's three black shaded higher density polygons there. Basically, we thought as a class that it would be best fit to have these higher density areas to limit sprawl and really compact these three places along Tenny Mountain Highway to be more walking friendly, and just to limit, as I said, just to limit the sprawl area. And the second major difference we made, we added 3 gateway districts along the northern part of Route 3, the southern part of Route 3, starting at the skate park, and then the area along 3A on the left that starts at the traffic circle and I believe runs to Hebron. Yeah. And just a little quick overview of what a gateway district is and what we defined it as in our district sheets. Gateway district provide establishments offering accommodations or services to motorists and to provide for non-pedestrian oriental retail, wholesale, and repair services. Yeah. Is there any questions to this map? Any concerns?
I have a question, just looking at the Gateway District sheet and the map. The Gateway District, the sheet says to the Tenny Mountain Country Store, and the map, and what you just said, says goes to the Hebron line. To me, it kind of makes more sense to cut it off either at Tenny Mountain, the entry to Tenny Mountain, or at the country store, as opposed to, once you get past that, it's definitely rural and maybe not as appropriate for, especially with the steep slopes in there and everything. So what does everyone else?
With the potential development at Tenny Mountain itself, perhaps instead of it going at Melvin Road, which is the country store, to go up past to the main entrance to Tenny Mountain, which is
Right, but the Gateway District is really just along the highway corridor. It doesn't expand up and into the.
Right,
yeah.
but because
Oh, I
that's a
see what you're
commercial
saying.
presence,
Yep,
stop it there
yep.
instead of,
Yep,
Stop it where?
at
At-
the entry
at-
to Tenny Mountain Highway.
not highway, but.
Or sorry,
ski area.
Tenny Mountain, period.
So the good news is any change you want to make to this map, we can
You
do.
can just do, yeah.
So it was their rationale that rather than do a GIS-based map and hand us something that we couldn't manipulate, they would do the Google-based map, which I had no experience with, and they created in class.
Yep.
And it was, I think, painful at times for some of them. 'Cause you got people watching, usually trying to click and move things around. And so the effort that they made was not to get the locations of each of the boundaries exactly where they should be,
Okay.
but to give us something that now we can look at it and
change.
say like, oh, it should stop here, and then drag it up. So we have this to manipulate, to have it represent whatever ultimately we want to engage people in conversation about.
Yep.
And then we'll have to actually pay money and have a GIS map done.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We're gonna need a budget for that.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But this should get us through the process so that people can make changes and we can feel like we can drag the
Okay.
line and.
All right, so we'll make sure that at least the ownership gets transferred from students to you or to me or something.
Yeah,
like
we're gonna
that, so-
send the Google Doc
Okay,
link. Yep.
all right.
So you say Google-based map. So the Google map that,
You have to ask him, I have no idea.
is it a Google map that, so how physically do you get the Google map, I guess?
I'm sorry,
Initial.
say that one more time? Like, just
Like, where'd you get that?
the map?
Yeah.
It's just off the Google services.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Google Map service.
It's one of the Google
Google
Suite,
Maps.
My Maps,
Yep.
yeah.
All right. And then you just, I mean, you can edit it.
Yeah, you can edit it.
Yeah, I've used it quite a bit, so
Perfect.
yeah.
Yep. She admitted
Drawing
it.
new boundaries all over the place. Yeah.
Thanks.
I will just add to what Colby shared that what they did, they pretty much kept the civic and institutional the way it is now. They did make some of the changes we've talked about to village commercial. I'm looking at Frank. To try to get rid of some of the weird things about like the agricultural zone and even around the common, just for us to think about. So we can continue to make those changes, but they did in places where we have talked about stuff and it seemed like we were on the same page, they tried to make changes. So it's a little bit different than the existing zoning map. And they did use the assessor's version, the one that's on the online mapping, more than just the static paper one.
Grace?
You know, actually, do you have much experience with granite?
Yes.
'Cause then you can overlay the steep zones and.
Right, it gets a little complicated if you're trying to do that in the Google My Maps. You can't always import the layers from Granite. But you can export the Google layers into KML files and then get them into, a Esri product or the open source Q product, so, yeah.
And there's nothing stopping, like what they did, they pulled this up on one side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen, you can pull up the assessor's mapping, you can pull up wetlands, you can pull up topo. They tried to keep it so that anybody could do it. In case this group burns out, somebody else could take over.
Yeah.
But so people don't feel like they can't get in and manipulate it, they have to trust somebody behind the screen to do it. And we have no budget for that. So.
Can I ask another? I have two more questions, actually, if that's all right. Just because I'm very interested in this rezoning conversation. So this is really to sharpen the sections of the highway, commercial, and the agricultural zones, correct? And you're taking areas that were in those two zones, and you're saying this is to more sharpen and highlight what's really going on there? Is that
Kind of
fair?
just
Right.
clean up the area.
Yeah, in the Gateway District, we totally took over highway commercial. That's one of the areas in the Gateway, is the north of 3. But yeah, exactly to your point, just to sharpen, kind of just to emphasize the whole idea of a highway commercial district, which is to create less pedestrian opportunities, more vehicular. Yeah, and kind of just like a welcome mat to the town, really, just to sharpen that. Yep.
And is it okay if I take a peek at the map? So is this particular map that you handed out tonight just for this particular sharpening of the gateway zones?
That map is all the new zones. They're all labeled on the side.
Because I know one thing that came up, you guys handed out this rural residential district.
Yes, that's the new agricultural district. And that's, on that map, it's basically everything else that's not outlined.
Right.
I'm just going to add that this is all not even proposed at this point. This is us. I'm saying
Yeah.
this for our home audience as well. That this is
Yeah.
this is a work in.
It's a tool.
Yeah, sorry.
So and it's not necessarily a rezoning so much as it is looking at what our existing what's happening right now and how to take the input that we had from the
Exactly.
public in our master plan and implement it into a zoning ordinance that works
Right.
for everybody.
Yep.
And I think prior to now, it's just been us talking about, like when we had conversation with Frank about gateway districts, we talked about it, but if you're a visual person, you couldn't see anything. So at least you could see it now and say like, oh, that makes sense, or no, that's an awful idea, and we should make some changes to it.
And I think in the district sheet for Gateway, we did provide examples as well of other towns. There's one in Portsmouth and one in Minnesota. They both did great jobs using gateway districts. So they're great examples just to look at, just to get a better idea of what they actually are. And that's the same for all the districts and these district sheets. I think we provide examples for all of them.
So is the idea to rename ag to rural residential in total? Or to
Yeah.
have two distinct zones, agricultural and rural residential? Just curious.
Again,
Because honestly, this is a great template, right, from which
Right.
to springboard into the implementation
Yeah.
of your tasks under the master.
well, to answer your question as a class, I think along with the Gateway District, we thought it would be a good idea to, after we all split up into pairs to drive around the town of Plymouth to look at specific districts and think about what we could do better. And for ag and highway commercial, sharpening was a huge thing because right now agriculture is a free-for-all from what we observed. So we thought rural residential, sharpening that name, let alone, and the description as well, just to focus more on that low density, mom and pop shops, gas stations everywhere, wherever they want, sort of thing.
So it's in place of, not both,
Right.
at this point.
Got it. Yeah, no, that helps to understand.
Any other questions with the map or the district sheets?
Are we going through? Can we?
Yeah. Does everyone have a copy of the district sheets?
We should all have copies of those.
Okay.
And you are gonna have them as Word documents, that's what
So
we're saying.
yeah,
Word documents and PDFs, but.
if you want, we can go them through one by one, like any questions on Gateway or et cetera.
So I have some questions, and in the gateway, and then I saw this in a couple places.
Sure.
The changing the accessory dwelling unit in a number of different zones from special exception to from permitted. And I'm wondering about the thought process behind that.
Shoot, that's a good question. Does anybody help me out here? Shoot, maybe.
You said they changed it from permitted. to
Yeah,
special
formally
exception.
permitted in the Gateway.
Right.
Yeah, formally, and I saw that in a few other places too. I think in the civic and institutional district.
Sure.
And the reason why I bring it up is, I think the whole purpose behind the accessory dwelling unit came in as a state law that all towns had to allow for accessory dwelling units.
Oh.
And I think it goes, it's not really in the spirit of the regulation or what we were thinking of for the ordinance itself to not allow it. I'm thinking of maybe some of the holdout residential areas that are in those districts. And the whole idea is to allow people to age in place, whether in their own home or in an accessory dwelling unit. So I think I would like to see it remain permitted.
Are there any districts that they should make sure it's not labeled permitted outright?
I guess they all need a permit anyway. They all,
Yeah, it's a
everything
conditional
comes.
use
bef-
permit.
Yeah, so everything comes before the, not,
You could leave it permitted in
Yeah.
every district.
yeah.
And
Just the way it's-
physically, it can't be accommodated here in the village commercial,
Right,
just because there's no space for it.
right. It just has to
as it
adhere to all the
stands.
setback regulations that exist within the zone. So, my other question in the Gateway District was, going from taking single and two-family homes that were once permitted in this area, that while, in making that also a special exception. It seems like that is gonna be I don't know if I wanna say a drastic change, but quite a change for that area, so that if somebody has a larger lot, wants to subdivide a lot, for their kid to live on or something like that, I think that I don't see why we wouldn't continue to allow those uses as a
Right.
permitted use, so.
I can agree with that as well. So we can do, maybe we can make that change.
My other question was on the personal wireless communication facilities. And then it's highlighted in red, and it's permitted. It's another state law. Then it says might change. Is that a,
It might be a question towards you.
Yeah. it's for
oh,
the
okay,
planning
that's
board.
for us. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I don't think we can say those aren't permitted, right?
Yeah, they don't have to let them in every district.
Okay, you don't have to let them in every district, okay.
No, you can restrict them. They don't know if you want to, but they
Okay.
want to flag it.
I don't know if we want to either, okay.
When we looked at that, when they were first proposed, just determining the lot size in the fall zone, they wouldn't meet the criteria to have them in town anyway.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And just as, you know, for these to be a usable document in the future, it'd just be helpful to see the permitted, the P3 actually is like a footnote from the zoning ordinance, so getting that somehow denoted in there.
Gotcha.
So we don't have to go into our own zoning ordinance to
Yep.
figure out what it is, because it's hard to find.
Okay,
stuff in there.
sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. That's what I figured it was, but it was, but just having that right there in the sheet would just make it a little easier to see.
Okay. You got it. Any other gateway questions while we're on it?
I've been jumping around a little, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I think this makes for a really good refining of this document.
And how much, I mean, you guys are done next week, but there's some time to refine some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few minutes during exam period. Basically, they're Word documents. They're not perfect. I personally don't like some of the, like we had some discussions about district names and stuff.
Yep,
But without all of you in the room,
right,
we weren't going to get to consensus anyway. So I had them do their own research and make their determination of what they
Yep.
thought was a good way to go forward. So they're rough drafts,
Yep.
but now everything's in one place, and we see how many districts we've started talking about over the last 9 months or whatever.
yep.
And there's still a lot of work to do. It's a tremendous amount of work to do. So don't let that fool anybody. But now we have something that you should be able to say, ask the questions that you're asking, and ask Grace's questions about how the map and the sheets go together. I'm hoping now everything's in front of us. We can say, wow, that makes sense. We really like it. Or no, this is not thought through yet. Let's spend more time on this. And I don't know how many districts we want to take on in work sessions going forward, but we probably should start right away. That was like a bummer of a statement, wasn't it?
We all knew that was true.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been at this for a year,
Yeah, it's true.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes,
And I just want to sharpen my question about like this formerly highway district. Because you're not suggesting that you completely rename the highway commercial, correct? It's just saying that part of that highway commercial is going to now be called gateway. So I would might change that to formerly within.
I believe
No, it's completely
it's
replacing.
completely, yeah, it's
Yeah.
then I
completely,
replace it and then increase it a little, and right? Because it wasn't,
It was just Route 3 North. It was
Just Route
basically
3
Baker
North.
River to Campton.
yeah.
Yep, past
And so
Plymouth
that's a
House and all
gateway now instead.
Understood. So is there still a highway commercial zone?
No,
Is there still an ag zone?
that. Yes.
no,
Well,
Or are we
rural,
just
it's rural
calling it
residential.
rural residential.
Yeah.
So the uses are
It
different.
helps me.
Yeah.
I think I got really lost.
That's why I said it wasn't one and the other. It wasn't rural residential and ag. It's just the rural residential right now. I think we need a better name.
Yeah, I think yeah.
I might have missed that because, yeah.
But it doesn't have, it's not as all-encompassing, like they found it was that kind of catch-all. It had every single use that was mentioned in all of our commercial uses. So what was the difference? And it was a pretty high density of potential development.
Yeah.
I almost think we need to start calling them numbers for like a good chunk of time, and
A
then
little separation.
and then see what it feels like at that point once we stop calling it.
I think it's a great idea.
I have a question. If it's rural residential, and it has been agricultural, now say there's a family there with a home, whatever, decent amount of land, that isn't gonna stop them from having like horses and different animals.
Not at all.
and-
Agriculture is one of the permitted uses, but right now it makes it sound like just agriculture is wanted there.
And that's exactly why I
Okay, so
think,
changing it wouldn't change whatever anybody would like to do.
No.
But right
Like
now in
that.
the agricultural zone, you and I just went on a site visit for Riverside Landing 2.
Yes, yeah,
That's not agriculture. All the agricultural
Yeah.
soil's gone.
right, it is gone.
So that's in that
But
district.
if somebody was there and wanted to have an animal,
They
it
could.
does nothing to do with that, that's what I'm.
and that's exactly why I suggest just starting to call them by numbers for a while until we just decide what each zone's gonna be, because I think we get hung up on agricultural, rural residential, and we're letting the title define what's happening in that zone in our minds instead of determining what's the best use and how is this being used and what's the best use for this space. So,
And it would be easy to do on the sheets and on that map, just to change the legend to a number or
Yeah.
a letter or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Roman
just
numeral
color.
1.
If you change it to a number,
We could call
I
it
mean-
colors. How about colors?
well, even that, I would, in my mind, it's like, okay, what does this mean? What does this number mean? What does this color mean?
Exactly.
But then you read the purpose
Yeah.
statement and get a sense for what's being talked about in that area, if it's village commercial type activity or if it's agriculture and homes and stuff.
I feel like we're relying too much on the title of each zone to define what's happening there.
Yeah, no, that's just where I'm stuck, because I
Yeah.
do rely on that
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
I'm-
Right.
That's fair.
And we don't have to
I'm
do that,
old,
but I
I'm
think
old school here.
Well, and if we do that, 'cause at some point we refine what we have to start having public workshops and inviting people in.
Yeah.
They'll get caught up
Right.
on the same names. And so if they're talking about Zone 7,
Yeah.
District 7, or whatever,
Yeah.
and we can
The
talk about.
red zone.
Purple zone.
Yeah.
I think it's good. But people are colorblind, so
It's
think
true,
about
yeah.
that. Yeah.
The polka dot
And have a
zone.
red or a green zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could have several meetings just about which color each one could be.
Oh, we could.
Yeah.
And a charrette. We need a charrette.
Yep. I need some public input on that.
I mean, I would be happy to coordinate with you and go through these and just do that. Just make them numbers and make sure the map and these
Yeah.
match. And then
Yeah.
bring them to the next meeting or February, whichever one you want to work on these at.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns on the gateway or any other district sheets?
Do we use Roman numerals? No.
Well, we'll get to work on the gateway
Yeah.
anyways, along with the permitting. And
Is this a good project for you guys?
it was awesome. Yeah, we really hope this helps you out, and we thank you for letting us do this for you guys, and your help was tremendous.
Was it easy and always fun?
It was always fun.
Really?
I don't know about easy.
You're kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. So.
But it was
Cool.
like head scratching for a long time for them. They had a big learning curve to get up to the place just to get us these draft materials.
It was a great experience, though, because, like, where else are we going to get this?
Right.
So,
No, you guys did a nice job, but I think it gives everybody in the class insight to how hard volunteer boards work to try to figure this out in the few minutes once a month. So,
great.
yeah,
You
we had a
should all
lot more.
join your own planning board when you settle wherever you are.
That was,
You'll be already ahead of the game.
Cool beans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Should we put together a work plan while we're talking about it?
Uh-huh.
I had a feeling that's where you're going next.
Yeah, so while we're on this, I think now's a good time for us to figure out what our next steps are for this project. So. Comments on the zoning board, not the zoning board. I'll say those comments for another time. Comments on our zoning ordinance examination. Anybody? We ready to move forward?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. So zone by zone, we think? Yeah. You want to start with the red zone?
Or one.
What's the red zone?
I have no idea.
Little chairperson humor there.
Yeah, told you I had some caffeine this evening. Do we dig into the community commercial district?
Yeah.
I just think that that's the one that's the biggest issue for us.
It's the one we started with, right? It's the
I
first
think it is
district
the one
we
we
talked
started
about.
with, and I mean, I guess that the agricultural / rural residential is a tricky one too, but I think looking at the Tenny Mountain Highway corridor, I think is a good place to work on.
So should this be zone 1, seeing how we're starting with it?
Yeah, that makes sense. We just set it up in order of the way we discuss it. I mean, we're going to keep calling it whatever we call it, but just looking at numbers and looking at it, and we talk about zones more than anyone else, but as we pull in more public input, I think it is a good idea to not focus too much on the names of the zones, so, especially the agricultural zone, so.
Right.
But commercial, what is it, the industrial commercial district?
Yeah.
ICD.
ICR, ICD,
ICD.
which is region. They have it as regional commercial here.
Regional commercial or community commercial,
Community
yeah,
commercial. Yeah.
so. All right. So we will dig into that, our January meeting.
Which is January what? Is it January 2nd?
No. Yep.
I actually ran into a problem the other day not having a schedule for next year.
January 1st is a Wednesday.
Okay.
I think it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Unless, is it still, it's not still holiday after January 1st, is it?
I don't know.
Day after the first? No.
Yeah, I don't know.
The holiday until the
just stay
following
closed.
Monday, isn't it? Yeah, okay, so,
January 2nd?
yep, January 2nd, we're gonna dig into, the ICD / Zone 1.
Okay.
And what do we think that's gonna look like? I mean, we've been digging into this for a while, but what do we think this is gonna look like?
So what they gave you, which now that they're gone, Ryan will tell them. It's not, their intent with these polygons was not to make them perfect. But one of the ideas we talked about, and then I talked about with them a little bit, within the Tenny Mountain Highway commercial corridor, we have some land that's developable.
Yep.
We have all the infrastructure. We don't have a pedestrian-friendly environment, like some of the things we keep coming up against. So their thought was, everything within that dark blue line is part of that commercial zone.
Yep.
So it starts to encompass things that are already commercial, like Riverside Landing. but that the gray areas could be a much higher density of allowable development. So maybe you end up with 1, 2, or 3 of these kind of nodes where you'd encourage people to do much taller buildings over time and closer together. And it doesn't mean that they can't develop in between those, but then places like Plymouth Ford, things that are generally going to be lower density and are going to be single story. If you have a landscape supply place, you probably don't necessarily want people living above it. But like our Riverside Landing 2 proposal, wow, wouldn't that have been cool if it was multi-story and included some housing? So that was one of the thoughts.
Okay.
To do that would require a real change in regulations
Oh, man.
to encourage that. And so if we just have to think about what would be helpful for the board to see, to evaluate whether that was a good thing to do or not. And remember, this is not for a zoning ordinance that's going to be dictating development for a year or two from now. It's for probably 20 to 40 years from now, considering how
I
long
don't
this
have to worry
one
about
hasn't been touched.
Right. So something that I've been thinking about too is, I know that, I think, actually, so I don't know, I'm pretty sure that the planning board has tried to push zoning change through in the past and hasn't done super well. So I think pulling people in sooner rather than later, so they're a part of the process, is really important. So, so I think we need to maybe be figuring out who the people who might be resistant to any sort of zoning change are. And I'm not saying that they're, I just want to bring all voices to the table. So getting people who have differing opinions from what just this board has, I don't think we're overly representative of a cross-section of all people in the town. So I think bringing as many people to the table during the creation of this is going to ensure its success. And if we don't do that, we're going to be spending years of our time working on this only to have it fall apart in town meeting. So
You're right, but how are you going to get those people in here?
we've got to ask them.
And we can't ask them, I've been thinking about this too. We can't ask them until we have something to pitch to them that's simple.
Yeah.
So even like the sheets that you guys have, kind of our working sheets, are too much information. People glaze over, right?
Yeah.
So if it's district number and a map showing where that district
Yeah.
number is, and a purpose statement, and maybe just a couple other things, just for conversation purposes, like, do we all agree that we should still have some kind of a village district? Do we all agree that maybe Tenny Mountain, the mountain itself, is different than the rural residential? Like, to have that level of conversation would be my thought.
Yeah.
Because I think we could get to that in a couple meetings.
Yeah.
If we try
Yeah.
to focus on essentials.
And I think that the idea is that this is not an attempt to exclude development. This is us trying to make sure that we're putting development in the place that's the most appropriate and encourage it in ways that maintain the character of the town, but also allow for, considerable commercial development that will help boost our tax base, so.
I mean, to be honest, I think that blue commercial area is way too big, and we don't get we haven't had a huge number of developments when you look at it like over a decade. And so it's going to continue to be sporadic and kind of sprawled out because it's such a big area. But to make it smaller than that would probably be the nail in the zoning's coffin. And so it's clearly allowing for a tremendous amount of development to happen in that area.
Well,
going
I mean,
forward.
it's been said that Tenny Mountain Highway is our lake, as far as property values.
How are we polluting it? Because I could barely cross it tonight.
Yeah.
But, as far as any kind of commercial development or any increase in the tax base, that's it. Everything else is built out along the corridors. I mean, and you'll see sporadic change, offices. I imagine the Civic Institution, long after we're gone, will extend all the way to Highland Street, just because it's a corridor. And, law offices are already popping up there and things of that nature. So, it's a big change, and I think Grace had it probably a representative sample of where the hell's the agricultural zone? That's so once we get away from the verbiage like the chair was saying, it'll be an easier sell. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you want some real good concepts before the public comes in and Also, emphasizing the fact that, density in certain areas is required, if not beneficial. And that's a hard sell, because we're all used to our elbow room up here, so. But everybody goes to the city because that's where everything's concentrated, but they don't want to have it at home. Well, you can have a little of both.
And ironically, that actually gives you more elbow room because
Yes.
you're, all the spaces in between. And the other thing, those kind of high density areas like that, built properly, are attractive. I mean, businesses are going to want to come here, and people are going to want to go there if they can park their car and walk around to a whole bunch of different things. And there's actually some nice parts in there too. Like, I just see those little places being like little downtowns. I think that's the coolest concept. It doesn't have to be, a place no one in their right mind would walk.
And we're going to see a real jump in traffic along there by summer. So a lot of those people will be coming from the west. And if they're interested in developing a business and to see the welcoming attitude, plus there is space there, to accommodate others. And if they do it properly, everybody benefits, because if, you and I wanted to go together on a building instead of, me setting up my business here and you there, the economies of scale kick in. So it's going to cost the two of us a lot less to develop that than it would if we pursued it individually.
Okay, so we're going to dig into this more on January 2nd. And is that good to halt the conversation now, or do we want to? In an hour.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, knowing that we're going to jump into these and then we're going to refine. I'm almost picturing like a single sheet for each of the districts that just has what the zone number.
Yep.
And then the purpose statement or some version of it that we decide on, because all these are draft.
Yep.
A list of uses, just to give people a sense if it's going to have things like agriculture and residential in them, or if we're really focused more on like commercial enterprises, and maybe just lot size. But like those four things, if we could go through each of the districts and say like, this makes sense, this needs work,
Yep.
and then start to get to a place where we could then update this map. Because when we do decide to ask people to come together, we can't do it in this format at a planning board meeting. We have to have a workshop where people can gather around and participate, and we can participate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just what I'm thinking.
Okay. Something else I'm thinking out, and I'd like to just think about document management a little bit, and how can we have these documents accessible for everybody except for Bonnie on the internet. We'll make sure you get them, but in a way that I think we just, like, these, we need to keep working on those. We can't be working on them in a format together, but how can we get them to a place where we can all access them easily? And I'm just not sure if we can have some sort of shared file for that, or if, I know I get so many planning board emails that I have to look for like the paperclip on each one to say, like, okay, maybe this is the one that has the attachments.
Right.
So, yeah, so my question is, can we figure out some way to share these documents in a way that's not a conversation amongst us? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and I don't know if we have broached that, or, actually, well, the Conservation Commission had, a Google,
So did the Energy Commission.
and but didn't really, I don't know if we really kind of checked that that was proper or not, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's just file storage. We're not talking on it.
yeah.
we're going to be editing it.
What's that?
We'll be editing it, reposting it, someone else is going to take a look at it. It's kind of like a.
I guess I'm thinking of more of a place to store the documents so we can all look at them and not so much edit them.
Just the most recent version,
Yeah.
you know where to find it.
And we could even just store PDFs up there so
Yep.
they're not getting edited.
Right.
But it would be nice if there's some sort of, like, it would just be nice for me to be able to pull this down instead of be like, okay, I need to look at this for the next, so I know where it is.
So I think we probably could do
Hey, Andrew, do we have room on the website for this stuff? Do we have room on the website for this stuff? Okay.
well, but,
Yeah.
60 gig is what Google gives you, so, we can just,
But I mean, it's a central location, people recognize where it is, even if you don't know the exact web address, you just type Plymouth, New Hampshire in, and that'll be the first thing that comes up, so. And we're storing more and more of these things on there anyway, or links to another site. So maybe, you're right, Bill, maybe they should be stored in a Google format, but accessible through a link on the website.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So should we work on having a simplified sheet for each of the numbered districts and a simplified map that
Yeah.
then we could post,
Yep.
and then we could engage people in a conversation? and-
Yep. Okay.
Got a question about, so the timeline, so like January 2nd, we're gonna be looking at that first page or something. And then we're gonna like target some time that we can invite, or have like a work session with external,
We have to get through all the districts before
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
otherwise we
maybe
could,
one at a time.
I wouldn't. I would give people a complete shot of what we're talking about. So they can see that if we're talking about larger lot sizes and change of uses in what was called the agricultural zone, it's offset by a lot more density and a lot of uses in these other commercial zones. Like that they can understand what the master plan said and what we're trying to do from the master plan. And then they might not have a ton of feedback the first meeting. They might need time to digest it.
I'm thinking like, so the commercial, you'll have like, just townspeople want to make sure that, commercial's where the commercial should be and, allowable, uses for it. And, but you also would have like developers that, would like, I think it should be like residents on top of businesses and say make it some good feedback with having like McGinley or somebody else milling about looking at these things. And he wouldn't want to go to like an overall view of every, zone, all the numbers,
I
but
think residents need to look at the whole picture to understand how
Yeah.
the pieces come together. And I think people are going to have questions like Bonnie has shared, just wondering like, does this mean I have to move out of my district? Does this mean that I can't have a horse in my district? And it's for everyone to know that they're grandfathered, nothing's going to change for them. But that there are things that they can still do. And maybe they'll tell us there are things they want to be able to do that we hadn't thought they'd want to.
Yeah.
So we can make changes. Because it has to be palatable to voters.
yeah, no, true.
Yeah. Does it make sense to you, though, if we waited a couple months, simplified each of these sheets and the map,
Yeah.
and then talked about the whole thing? And then we could always have, if we find that it's one or two zones that are the hardest to figure out, we could always have some more focused sessions on those.
Yeah.
All right. So I also have January 1 is kind of the planning session for the year too, the planning to plan, for us to sort of look at plan out our work sessions when different things are going to happen. So maybe that's a time where we can just sort of lay out where we think some of these things are going to happen.
That'd be great.
And, yeah.
When does PSU, February 1st, something like that, we'll have a new class?
It's like January 16th, but yeah, I won't have, I have too many students. But we're not putting 26 people on this.
We need like 37. Maybe not 37
Make a
students.
cluster, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Sure.
Get a cluster of kids.
So I think for the next work session, we're going to talk about the zone that encompasses Tenny Mountain Highway. So I think a good review to do in the weeks we have in between is to read through the master plan, look at what it says about that zone, look through the zoning ordinance. It might not even hurt to look through like site plan regs to see what they're saying about how we're asking people to present information to us too.
And
So,
definitely look through we'll send these around again, but look through the purpose statement and stuff and what the students
Yep.
put together, because it might generate ideas of what's missing or
Yeah.
what you don't like.
Yep.
You don't have to like what's there.
And then the links to to some of the inspiration and the other examples of what they've looked at, I think would be good too. Yeah. So we'll do a reminder to do that at our meeting 2 weeks from now. And then I'll try and send out a reminder the week before to remind everybody what we said we're gonna do. I'm gonna work really hard to remember that.
I'll send you a reminder.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
remind everybody.
And, yeah, anything else on this stuff? We need more planning board members.
Yeah, I asked someone today, and there's no way they wanted to.
Yeah. So,
I didn't even think about it. It was like,
Instant?
yes.
Who wouldn't? This is fun.
note that Brian handed out the packet for the meeting on the date for 2 weeks from today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm guessing we can't really look through them and talk about them.
Just get them out of the way.
But note that those have been distributed.
Only in groups of 2, Steve.
Right.
Yeah, I'll call you
Yeah.
tomorrow. And then
Yeah.
And I'll send electronic copies of the applications and the planner's report.
Okay.
And print a few for
So,
reference.
are we to a place where we can ask questions? General questions?
Yes.
I've been thinking about capital improvement programs because we have some towns that are working on capital improvement programs, and so it made me wonder about Plymouth's. I can't find one, Brian. Do we have one?
A capital improvement plan, you'd have to ask the selectmen.
yeah, we have the capital improvement funds, yeah.
No, but we don't have a plan that says like over the next 5 years how we're gonna make big capital improvements, roadways, purchasing vehicles.
No.
So we don't have one. We've never.
No.
All right. Because we talk about it in the master plan, and then I was like, oh, I wonder how old it is, and then I couldn't find it. So I had a feeling that we didn't have one. That would be something. I mean, it's something that the planning board is somewhat responsible for. So as much as we already have a lot of stuff on our plate, and we don't have a budget currently, right, for hiring anyone to do.
No, mostly it's for engineering and copies and things of that nature.
And training too, right? We can send somebody for training. I thought we had like.
Yeah, we do, but, I mean, for
But not for. capital
big
improvement.
money, we'd have to, I don't know how it was appropriated for the master
I
plan
don't need, it was before me. Yeah.
rewrite, yeah.
Yeah.
We should think about it though, because, I mean, we've probably missed the boat budget-wise.
Oh, yeah.
For this year, but in thinking about what we're working on, and if we do want to move some of these non-regulatory things ahead, and we do want to help the other departments, and we have new leadership in town hall, like,
Yeah.
what is our plan? How are we planning to spend money? How do we make sure we have a plan to, and part of it was thinking about how South Main Street comes up all the time, and it's still a problem, and we're not planning for the improvement of it, and so I was like, oh, maybe that's in the capital improvement plan. Or Railroad Square, or some of these perennial problems.
Right.
So,
At least the conversation's been started on those.
no, it has, but how
That's-
good to document it and say, well, how much money can we set aside each
Yeah.
year, so that if we know we're gonna have to face
And we're
it.
actually working to that. Some of the stuff that bears on South Main Street is already in the works,
Okay,
as far as, drainage engineering, things of that nature. There's a big question mark on a lot of that stuff because of the uprooting of the South Main Street that's coming. And,
because of the infrastructure
yeah,
upgrades
the
for
water and
sewer.
sewer projects. So we're trying to catch up to see what we can do while they have a hole in the road. And, what that impends for, like the Russell Street drainage and the Railroad Square drainage.
Right,
So Joe's been working Railroad Square up. He's already got the plan for Russell Street mostly done and a chunk of Pleasant. But, if you're gathering all this water and putting it through a choked artery down below, it's not going to do any good. So you want to open the bottom end up first so you can get the other stuff. Everything is so enmeshed together. But,
Before we get too far, everyone knows what the CIP, the capital improvements plan is, right? Everyone's familiar with what that is?
I bet not everyone at home does.
Oh, yeah, we have, who wants to explain it, because I'm not gonna do a very good job looking at
It's usually a document that lays out a 5-year plan for big expenditures. So it's everything, and it's usually broken out department by department. So it's new apparatus for police and fire. It's some of the capital improvements that are infrastructure related that Brian's talking about right now. But it's set, and it's things like capital improvement plans, that the planning department would have a line item for 3 years out from now to spend 20 grand to update the capital improvement plan or to update the master plan or to pay to have someone do the zoning.
It's for non-recurring items over a certain amount. It's like $10,000 or $20,000.
There we go.
That sounds like the voice of a future planning board
I
member.
know, I was going to repeat that since we had someone new come through the door, that we need planning board members.
Watch him run away.
Yeah.
I'm only here for beer.
That's only for members.
Yep. Now you're interested. But if you look at Littleton's, it's a small document, and it's due to be redone next year. So it's at the end of its 5 years. But it's a way to lay these things out and for people to know what's coming. Yeah. And we have a lot of things we said would go in the CIP and the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me thinking about it.
And usually it falls under the purview of the planning board to create the CIP.
In a lot of cases, it
Yeah.
does.
Or
Yeah.
often it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And we do, sorry, this isn't me switching gears. We do have our new town administrator will be joining us at some point in January too.
Yes.
So
I
this,
talked to her, she'll come and say hi.
yeah.
Oh, good.
So, yeah. So it's a good time to show her all the things that fall on her plate in the master plan. And just, so if there's questions for the town admin, that's a good time to do that, so. Any other comments from the board? Any updates from other boards?
Well, after you.
No, go ahead.
Zoning board met Tuesday night. I was telling Steve earlier, the Mountain Village Charter School is going to be relocating on the parcel that surrounds the Sears building, or warehouse furniture out there.
Okay.
Cozy Cabin, Comfort, or, and that seems to be, they'll be coming to see you very shortly. They just finally got the go-ahead and they're running with it. And that's about it. I mean, other than the standard stuff that comes through here. That's it.
And the select board is targeting the budget right now.
Okay.
Working with the budget committee to review capital improvement items, not a plan, but, and I also went to a meeting last night, Bridgewater, at their town hall, and DOT was doing a PowerPoint on the bridge that's going to be rehabbed between Ashland and Bridgewater.
Oh.
And they're targeting 2022 to, start that.
Is there going to be a
Finish it.
sidewalk on it?
Nope, there is not going to be a sidewalk. There's a
You ever
footnote,
walked across that bridge?
Scary.
Rid my
Yeah.
bike across it.
And I did it in the dark.
and it kind of bounces too.
In Crocs.
Tell that story?
No, you told me that. Sorry.
So it's got a foot and a half, and that's going to remain the same because it's a historic thing and they can't modify it. Ultimately, in like 20 or 30 years, they're going to put a new bridge in. So,
But pedestrian danger is historical value.
well, a biker was hit, I guess. There was an accident.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
but the biker didn't get thrown over the railings.
It's
So.
scary.
That railing's only like this high, and it's a long ways down there.
And it's 50 miles an hour right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shallow spot in the river too, if you're thinking that way.
When was that bridge built? Does anybody know?
1927. Actually, I took notes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
When was it?
Wait 40 more years, though.
It was. Crap. The funny thing is, well, not really funny, but 38.
1938?
Yep. And it's 800 feet. And there were two options that DOT was going to entertain. One is to do it in phases. So they would shut down one lane, do one lane, and the, understructure and stuff. And then the next year, they would shut down the other lane. And that would require, because it's so friggin' long, that you'd be like sitting in a long line waiting for, the light to change. And unfortunately, the other option is to close the bridge down for a whole season.
Wow.
And that would require an 11-mile detour one way up through Plymouth, or an 18-mile detour the other way from point to point. And that was unacceptable for safety purposes. So, yeah, we're gonna be looking at a stoplight there.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
2 years.
as I recall, back in like 86, 7, they redid it, and they did it exactly that way.
Yeah, they did.
Restricted traffic to one lane, and
When's that gonna
painted cars as they went by.
2022.
I'm sure you
Spring.
avoid it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Alright.
But last night, there was a couple of reps, a Senate wannabe, Senator wannabe,
Say.
and,
Whatever that was.
and, some, Ashland Fire, chief and such, and, yeah, and it was pretty much, we were all adamant that because of safety purposes, you shall leave it open
Yeah.
in some manner, so. Yeah,
Wow.
that's pretty much it.
Anything from the Conservation Commission?
not since the last time we met.
Anything from the public?
Yes. My name's Frank Miller. My work and focus has been on the village commercial zone, and my big focus is doing the inventory of all of the existing structures and infrastructure. One thing that has crossed my mind, and since I have maps back to 1900, our village commercial zone and part of our civic institution zone is basically 120 years old, and is the only zone in the town that no one building owner owns sufficient property to mitigate any environmental or compliance issues with land use. It is a we, us, and our zone, and the problem with it is fixed. So all the other zones for development have the capability by land use, minimum lot 2 acres, whatever, to mitigate drainage and any other issues to use a piece of property. But our downtown is pretty much fixed. It was designed by horses. And simple things like parking designs and ordinances that we're going to be talking about here in the Selectmen's meeting, we're having trouble complying with new ordinances of what we've already got. An example is we have 8 fire hydrants on Main Street. The ordinance is you can't be parked within 15 feet of a fire hydrant. Unfortunately, there's no one fire hydrant on Main Street that's in compliance. So looking at all other aspects of what we are trying to reevaluate the zones, the village commercial zone area hasn't even had an environmental inventory. And those capital improvement programs, there's a 6-phase, 6-step evaluation to establish a capital improvement program. And the first item on it is the inventory, the prospective area. So you have, what's known, and then to make a determination as to, is it in the configuration that you like, or do you see possibilities that need changes, and then you start looking at demand capacity and those kinds of things. But I think the hardest part right now is the zone boundaries of the village commercial zone, the zone description of what we call the downtown area, and all those things that make it so confusing for the citizens to understand what this planning board is trying to articulate for the improvements of any zone numbering, naming, relining, or whatever, because we, right here in a very condensed area of our downtown area, we have so many variables that we don't even have that commonality of vocabulary to have a discussion about, pick any one subject of the elements that we are trying to improve in our zones. So I think the village commercial zone and part of the civic institution, it's already built, it's condensed, and now is done. It was done before fire codes, which were established in 1914, and any other code systems that came along, and the zoning that established in 61, that we have a lot of issues that we need to mitigate. We need to acknowledge and appreciate that we're trying to do things here in our downtown that we wish we could have done 100 years ago. Drainage and water and sewers, one, and parking and sidewalks and streets and everything else. And then we have to consider the terrain it's on. So I think I'm still in the process of inventorying all of those items, but I've been surprised and kind of taken aback by the South Main Street area, Parker Street, which is part of the environment that impacts that drainage. None of that's been inventoried for the environment. There's an analytical process of evaluating that, which would in fact affect the design of your drainage and other uses that would directly impact what we would try to change for the village commercial zone. So I just, that is my focus of my work in my office, and I'm collecting and keeping all the documentation I can get, any maps that generate from the highway, university, historical society. I'm putting it one place where people can come up and access it and look at it, and we can pick one end item subject and just get input from that. And like you say, it does need to be available in a non-official place, because when you're trying to get feedback from the average citizen, they don't like necessarily coming to these boards, because mainly they may not have all of the vocabulary of the subject matter, and they don't feel comfortable trying to talk about something they don't have the words to. But if you can get them in a room with the maps on the big tables and say, well, what do you think? What do you see is there? What do you see is missing? And what would you like to have? Now you start writing down options, and I think that may help us with this process. So I, would like to be in support of any of these projects you're doing. My focus is on the village commercial downtown area. So, thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Other comments from the public?
Thank you. What you do is highly underappreciated.
Thanks, Bill.
It's hard work.
It's a good bunch.
You're up, Chris.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right.
Time.
All those in favor?
It's time.
Aye.